Purple Positivity with Justin Ekstrom, brought to you by 7th Avenue Pizza. Grab one at your local grocery store or your local holiday station. 7th Avenue Pizza, before pizza became trendy.
Welcome into yet another episode of Purple Positivity, brought to you by 7th Avenue Pizza. And the mere fact that you push the button that says play on the Beer Belly Sports app or whatever the hell, wherever you're listening. Either way, Purple Positivity. How do you be positive when your best player on a team that has one win in the season is now going to be done for 4 weeks? Well, I guess the positive spin on that is, the positive spin is you get to see what other people can actually do without Justin Jefferson in there. It looked like they were going to be just fine without him, and they actually went down the field, and the Vikings, the offensive line, seemed to be doing pretty good until C.J. Ham got his face basically ripped off with one of the defensive lineman's hands, and not hands to the face was called, so that was cool. Then pass interference was called and taken back, and the guy took his helmet off, and that didn't get called. I know that it would just be a 15-yard penalty, and the Chiefs would still have the ball, but still, the Vikings had a chance. They had an opportunity, just couldn't quite get it done. They were right there, blow for blow. The under hit, like I thought, and the Vikings lost by one score, just like I thought. So, here we go. I got two perfect predictions so far, albeit they're on the loss side of things. Now we go to dreadful Chicago. Dreadful Chicago. Nothing ever good comes of the Vikings going to Chicago in October. It's awful. It's usually the Monsters, the Midway game. It's the game, a few years ago it was on Halloween. All of a sudden things were just terrible. Anyway, they did win in Chicago last year. It was close, just like most of last year was. But this year, say what you want about Justin Fields, the dude can sling it. He can run. Vikings have a lot of trouble with quarterbacks that can run, can be inside the pocket, can be outside the pocket. I like to call that like a phone booth quickness, but Patrick Mahomes and now Justin Fields this week, they have more than just phone booth quickness. They have an elusive speed that can actually get you away from linebackers, get you away from defensive linemen, and sometimes can run around cornerbacks and safeties. So I hope Flores has himself a good game plan to get Fields off of his spot. If you can hit Fields in a regular stride, you can make him really skittish, that seems to lead to turnovers. I actually picked up the Vikings defense in fantasy this week in two of my leagues because I'm hoping for the turnovers. Vikings defense is 20th or 25th or something like that in fantasy, which doesn't really matter for this podcast. But still, I think the Vikings defense can have somewhere around 3 or 4 sacks, a pick, and hopefully a defensive score. But how many opportunities is our defense going to get with an interception, surefire interception, or a fumble that can go right in their hands and they don't catch it or don't fall on it? Anytime that the Minnesota Vikings fumble, it goes immediately to the other team. And it's like the first play of last game. It was it just popped right into the hands of two of the Kansas City Chiefs. That just seems to be what happens. The Bears have had, they're going to have 10 days of rest, and they're going to be hosting the Vikings. I don't know what the weather is going to be like. I know it's going to be kind of crummy here all weekend, but in Chicago, I could see it be raining, be gross. It doesn't matter. That field's absolutely trashed the way it seems anyway. And we'll probably hear about, the Vikings not being able to get the right footing, all that stuff. You always seem to hear that for opposing teams going into Soldier Field or whatever the hell it's called now. Tampax Stadium at a mile high via Chicago, whatever. It will always be Soldier Field to me. Either way, I think the Vikings win? Question mark? Yeah, okay. They win. The Vikings win. It's going to be close. I got it 27-24. I think the Vikings offense will do just enough, and their defense will probably bend but don't break. They're going to live by the blitz, die by the blitz, and Fields is going to kind of pick them apart a little bit. He's going to have himself a day, probably 2 touchdowns, one throwing, one running. And their running game's kind of not, say what you want. Deontay Foreman, he kind of came out pretty good last year when he was filling in for some guys. So I really liked him coming out of school. I want to say it was Texas, but I can't 100% remember because, it doesn't really matter. I'm Justin Ekstrom. It just absolutely doesn't matter. So anyway, I got the Vikings 27-24 over the Bears. It's a question mark game here. If they lose this, let's say they get embarrassed. Is it time to tank? Is it time to see what you can get for some of these guys? Like, is that Danielle Hunter trade going to actually happen that people are talking about, that Jacksonville wants him? Or is that just fodder? I don't know. Could you imagine if they won and still got rid of Danielle Hunter? And how soon does it happen a competitive rebuild just turn into a rebuild? I say if they lose this game, say if they get embarrassed. At Chicago, I could see them heading to San Francisco waving the white flag, because the next 4 games, they have to go at least 500 to have a chance. They're going to be favored in 3 of the games. I believe they're favored at Soldier Field, even with JJ out, by a point and a half, something like that is the latest. I think they're 1.5, something like that. Either way, Vikings win 27-24. If they win, get yourself 7th Avenue Pizza. If they lose, get yourself 7th Avenue Pizza. As somebody driving by honking, they must have heard that I was talking about 7th Avenue Pizza, because 7th Avenue Pizza is freaking phenomenal. Either way, special thanks to Matt Geffrey, the Giraffe, and to Beer Belly Sports. And as always, Skol bitches.